Ryan Souls es fundador de Capital Group y lleva involucrado en la política estadounidense desde los años 70, participado en campañas a nivel federal, a nivel estatal. What's different about this election?
Sure. First of all, in the United States, people have pretty much taken sides. We're either Democrat or Republican. There's very few left in the middle. Independents, undecided, ticket splitters. Used to be a lot more, but as politics has become more important to people, they have picked sides earlier. So they're very partisan.
Okay.
You're either a Democrat or Republican, and there's a very few number of people in the middle. And those are the people who are likely going to decide who the next president is. Because if you're a Democrat, you're voting for Kamala Harris. If you're a Republican, you're voting for Donald Trump. And the same is true here in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is important because it's what's called a swing state, meaning the elections have always been very close here. So if you want to win nationally, you have to win Wisconsin. And there are 7 states like that across the country that are swing states, they're targeted states, Wisconsin's one. So in order to win the president, it's not a popular vote. It's not who gets more votes than anybody else. We have an electoral college.
Okay.
And each state has a number of electoral votes. Wisconsin has 10. So to win the presidency in an election, you need 270 electoral college votes from however many states you win. And so California has more votes than Wisconsin, but Idaho has fewer. So it's all different across the country. And that's what determines. So Wisconsin, because it's been very close for the last several elections, is a targeted state. If you want to win, you have to win Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, Georgia, those states. So that's why we're one of 7 states in the country that the candidates and even political pundits will say, you have to win Wisconsin.
That's what President Donald Trump said, and I think that's why Donald Trump and Kamala Harris accepted their nominations in Milwaukee. And if you look at it that way, Milwaukee has become iconic, so to speak.
It's been I think it's the first time that a national convention has been in Milwaukee, certainly for the Republicans. And so that was quite a coup that the officials in Milwaukee put together. But it also reflected the fact that the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, those are all really important states. And the Democrats had their convention in Chicago. Again, another Midwestern state, really emphasizing how important. And if you want to look at the 2 vice presidential candidates, J.D. Vance is from Ohio, Midwestern boy, the Republican.
Okay.
Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, another Midwestern state. So you see a lot of emphasis on the Midwestern states because they know if you win these states, you could probably win the election. If you don't, you're gone.
So what would it take for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump to win the heart of Wisconsin?
Well, I think today as we do this interview, there's maybe 50 days left before the election, somewhere in there. And all of the big events have happened. We've had the Republican convention, the Democrat convention, they had the debate. So now there are not many big events that are going to happen. It's all about what we talk about is the ground game.
Okay.
Going to meet candidates, going to meet voters, having rallies, having different, events that try to generate. But it's also reaching out to people. So they're volunteers in Wisconsin. The Democrats and Republicans have their volunteers in all communities, and they will go knock on doors. They'll hand out literature. They'll make phone calls. They'll do everything they can to reach the voters, especially those who they find are undecided.
So you're telling me it's not about inflation, immigration, unemployment, but to be close to the people, what will define this election in Wisconsin?
Oh, sure. I mean, so I was talking about the things that campaigns and candidates have to do to connect the voters. But once you connect, they're going to want to know, what's your plan for the economy? How are you going to deal with immigration and the border? How are you going to deal with the wars that are going on in other countries? All of those things. There's a list of, there's so many things. Crime, education, the environment. It goes on and on. Even TikTok and China, how to deal with everything.
Of course.
How to deal with the border. How to deal with South America and the elections there. What do we do? So there's so many issues that voters want to know. So campaigns and the candidates really have to not only connect with voters, but they have to be prepared to talk to them or at least share with them what their issues are. Now, we do a show here in Madison, La Movida, the radio station here. And one of the things we do there with Lupita is to talk about how voters can go find information, because they really have to educate themselves.
That's
So,
cool.
and the show is really important because it reaches a group of people that, we hope to share where you can go find information. Go to the candidate website. That's pretty easy. Go meet a candidate. Go to an event. Because if you don't know the issues and if you don't know where the candidates stand on the issues, you probably have other reasons that you could pick somebody. But we really try and emphasize and hope people will go out, and if they don't go to a campaign rally or something, that they'll at least find out where somebody stands on the economy. I mean, what is somebody going to do to lower grocery prices? Or what's somebody going to do to make, education more, accessible? Those sorts of things. There's so many things out there.
Okay. So right now we're getting every day closer to the election. Who do you think is going to win Wisconsin and the election?
Well, if I knew that, I'd probably make $1 million and go take a nap someplace. This election is really hard to project because somebody might lead in this state, somebody might lead in another state, but pretty much across the country, in the targeted states, it's really close. In Wisconsin, Joe Biden beat Donald Trump 4 years ago by 20,000 votes. 4 years before that, Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 20,000 votes. So we're a very close state. So today, it's probably fair to say that Kamala Harris has a little bit of a lead, but certainly not enough to guarantee a win. So between now and Election Day, candidates are going to, and they're all of the people that are on their campaign, whether it's the spouse or surrogates or the vice president, they're all going to have to come here. They're going to have to meet with people. They're going to have to make their best case because it's those people who are undecided right now. They don't know who they're going to vote. And there's going to be something that they feel draws them closer to a campaign. But it hasn't happened yet. So there's no magic formula out there that says, if you do this and this and this, you'll get them and you'll win. I think in Wisconsin, it will probably go down. It'll get close to Election Day before you have a real sense of who might win. 4 years ago, we didn't know. Going Election Day, it's like, who's going to say question? Who's going to win? We don't know today. And I think if you went to some other states, if you went to California, you probably would see that Kamala Harris is going to win there. And if you go to Florida, Donald Trump might win there. So those states are kind of settled. But Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, those states are not settled yet. It's very close. And today, I don't think anybody can tell you who's going to win. They might tell you who they want to win, or maybe who they think, but there's not enough out there yet to say this candidate is going to win. Not yet.
Who do you think would be a better president for the USA, Kamala or Donald Trump?
Well, I don't like either, so I don't know if I can answer your question. That's what voters will have to decide. If what they hear from Donald Trump and his vision of the economy and how he's going to run the country and how he is president on all of the issues that we talked about, whether it's immigration, education, crime, foreign affairs, if they feel confident that he can perform his job as president and they agree with how he wants to do things, that's where they're going to go. For Vice President Harris, she's been in the Biden administration for 4 years, so she has a track record. And she would talk about, she wants what people like what she has to say. They're going to go that way. But right now, both campaigns have 95% of the Democrats and 95% of the Republicans. But it's that little group in the middle that they're really trying to get to. They want to understand what those folks want. What's most important to them? Is it grocery prices, food prices? Is it their community? Is it the environment? There's so many things. It's just not easy to figure out what it is.
And it's very complicated. Talking about getting closer to the voters' heart, what do you think about Donald Trump assassination attempts? This is the first election in so much time that I remember at early past 2 times with a candidate trying to get murdered.
Right. I think the last assassination on Trump was Ronald Reagan back in the early 80s, and that's when he was president. He worked with advanced teams with the White House and with security. And it's really always been very tight and very well controlled. This time it's a little different because of the assassination attempt on Trump the first time. That was kind of out of the norm and totally unexpected by everybody, the Secret Service, the security, the police, the force, everybody. But that was a serious attack. The one yesterday, I'm a little skeptical. It didn't appear to be a very well thought out assassination. The guy hid in the bushes. His gun wouldn't shoot that far. He ran away. Maybe it was a PR thing. And I want to dismiss the seriousness of an attempted assassination. Just the mere fact that those things should scare people. And they should step back and go, wait a minute, there's something really wrong here. It's not wrong to have two different points of view. But to take away somebody's right to speak them by shooting them or assassinating them or suppressing their voice, and that's not what democracy in America is all about. Democracy in America is sharing your opinion, having a discussion, whether you agree or disagree. The opportunity to learn what candidates have to offer, that's what it's about. So these people that want to take the government into their own hands or to take a candidate out by assassinating, there's nothing worse that I can think of in a democratic country.
What gets into my mind is political violence. In Mexico, we have experienced a lot of political violence, and now to see this happening in the USA, it's quite shocking. Do you think that political violence is here to stay?
Well, I hope because this is such a contentious presidential election, and by contentious, both sides really want their side good, but because they're so different. If Trump wins, the Democrats are just going to be like, Harris wins, Republicans and the MAGA people will be like, it's going to be the worst 4 years ever. That's okay. It's okay to have political opinions and differ. But if you resort to violence, you will never be successful. If you want to have all the streets painted red and you want to have violence to make that happen, it's never going to happen. Violence in a democracy simply isn't tolerable. I don't know enough about Mexico and South America and the violence that happens in those countries and Europe and others. And as you said, it hasn't happened in this country for a long time. Again, I think it points to how intense and passionate people are for their candidates. But for those very few people who believe that violence is a way to make something happen, I believe they're going to find out they're wrong. And it's not a trend that would happen, even though we've had a second attempt. To be another one, too. People are now scared that there's going to be more. I don't think, though, that is going to last. Even though we see violence at the border and in other cities, that post-COVID, when we had the whole protests, we talked about the riots and protests here and there, and other places, that happened. But I don't believe it's a trend that's going to continue.
I think that maybe this could be a result of polarization. Is we cannot pretend that American society is not getting everything polarized. I think even since COVID happened, all these divisions, social equity, people that are outside of the American dream became more evident. Do you think that has something to do with this?
It has something to do with violence. I think it has to do more with a lot of serious thought about who's going to be better for this country, who has the better positions on issues, who has the better plan. And I think one of the things that's missing in this campaign debate between the two candidates is who is offering a better plan. And both sides are offering good ideas. Let's have a better economy. Let's afford a house. Let's have this, let's have that. But I think people want to know, how are you going to do that? If you want to give me a tax cut, how are you going to pay for it? I think people want to know, are you going to raise those taxes to cut this one? Or if you want to give somebody $25,000 to buy a house, okay, well, who's going to pay for that? And what about the people who already put the $25,000 of their own money down to buy a house, and now you want to give them money just to go pay? So I think people are really trying to assess all these different ideas, but I don't believe there's enough details that they presented. And I'm not certain they're going to do this. I think they're going to say, this is where I stand. This is what I believe on this. This is how I'm going to lower grocery prices and gas prices. This is how I'm going to make education affordable, how to buy a house. But they're not necessarily going to tell you the details of how they're going to do it. They want you to support them in kind of general concepts. And there are some people who are still waiting for answers.
I know, especially when you take questions of the national scheme and you put it out on the local scheme. As in Wisconsin, for example, we have different local groups that might help to find an election. How does that work? If I were part of Kamala or Donald Trump's team, who do I need to talk to, and what do I need to offer in order for them to lean to my side?
Yeah, both political parties could have had their organizations that support. So on the Democrat side, you see more labor unions, you see more liberal organizations, you might find environmental groups and different types. And on the Republican side, you might find more business organizations supporting it. Each side kind of groups pick the side that has generally been better for them when people are elected into Congress or here in Wisconsin in our state capital. But if they see somebody who's been elected, they'd be like, oh, you support my issues, and that organization adopts them. So traditionally in the U.S., you've seen those types of organizations align with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Those organizations also then reach out to their members and their supporters and encourage them to go vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or their state legislator or member of Congress. That's kind of how it works in politics in the U.S. It's not that it's the same in other countries too. But those are kind of generally what you see. And I think campaigns do rely on those organizations to kind of reach out to their members and supporters to make sure that they understand that this candidate supports their issues. And if they do, then the hope is that those people will vote for that candidate. But it's not a guarantee. Just because somebody might be a Republican doesn't guarantee they're going to vote for Donald Trump, or a Democrat doesn't necessarily guarantee they're going to vote for him. You really have to work for the vote. Candidates have to work for it. They have to ask for the vote, to earn it, and to just assume that people are going to vote for you. Not necessarily a successful strategy.
I totally agree with you. And thinking what you're saying, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about American democracy. We cannot pretend nothing happened after some people took the state capital, January the 6th. How do you think this has changed American democracy, and where do you think this is heading to? Do you have a good diagnosis of what's coming up?
Well, first of all, there's two lines that I always remember that politicians, elected officials said. One was an old politician from Massachusetts. He said, all politics is local. It is. What matters, that's where you think about things here.
Right.
The other thing is that politics in the United States is cyclical. So if you think go way back to Ronald Reagan, 20, 30 years ago, moving forward to Bush and Clinton and Obama and Biden, we have these cycles where sometimes you find from the Democrat Party being a little bit more popular, and in other times Republicans are very popular. When George Bush was president, he benefited from a disaster from 9/11, but it strengthened his presidency because he showed what a leader he was. He was able to coalesce the country. Republicans and Democrats, we're all Americans. The hell with politics, and we need to gather together. So you find politics in these cycles to be cyclical. This election cycle, we have two very polarizing candidates, very polarizing, and hard for people in the middle to decide where to go. 4 years from now, we could have an entirely different situation because you don't know who the candidates are 4 years from now. 4 years ago, when it was Joe Biden and Donald Trump, Joe Biden's campaign convinced all of their supporters, whether they liked Joe Biden or not, to vote against Donald Trump. It wasn't all Joe Biden. It was, we just can't stand Donald Trump. And so they all voted against Donald Trump, Joe Biden. Great strategy. It worked very well. 4 years before that, Hillary Clinton didn't do that. She didn't have that strategy to try and defeat Donald Trump. In fact, she never came to campaign in Wisconsin. Now, if you look at this election, you know how many times Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Tim Walz have been here? Dozens. And they're going to be here 3 or 4 days a week. All of those candidates, one way or another, they're going to be here so often because there's a group of undecided voters. And as we said earlier, you have to get to them if you want to win. And if you're not here, you're not going to win. So this cycle is very different than 4 years ago and 4 years before that. So I don't think this is a continuing trend. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't as polarized as a country and partisan as a country. But depending on who's president and in the next 4 years and how they perform, has a lot to do with the election 4 years from now. Who runs? With Donald Trump, if he loses, will he run again? Yeah. If he wins, then he's prevented from running again. Same with Kamala Harris. If she runs and wins, she could run again. If she loses, she could still run again. So each party looks for leaders that can coalesce not only Democrats on their side and Republicans on their side. They look for leaders that can draw other people. George Bush used to call it a big tent. We wanted to have a big tent so Republicans had not just Republicans. They wanted to have all members of the community, regardless of where they came from, what their heritage was, what their economic status was, their education, George Bush believed in a big tent. I think this country's lost some of that. Each side thinks they're the bigger tent, but in actuality, we're pretty partisan. We're pretty polarized.
Do you think traditional parties have this leadership crisis? Because this election before Kamala Harris entered the Senate, you have pretty much a remake of what you had last election. And if you look at the Dems, there's not much to look at. And if you look at the Republicans, there's so much to look at as well.
That's the choice people have. And it's hard to say because on the Republican side, Donald Trump had been president when he went out and said he's going to run again. Most of the other candidates who wanted to run understood that it would be really hard to beat him in a primary to get in front of him. And on the Democrat side, while Joe Biden was the nominee as an incumbent president, there was lots of talk in the last 6 months about whether or not he was his age and other conditions, whether or not he would be able to do the job. And when the debate came between Trump and Biden, it was clear that he was not quite there. So the Democrats had to hustle and get a new candidate, and vice presidents are generally considered to be prospective candidates because they are next in line if something terrible happens to the president. So Kamala Harris was where they had to go. They just couldn't do that. So they had to figure out what was the best way to get rid of Biden. And they say, thank you. And how to bring her on board to say, this is our new candidate who she's great, even though we don't know a thing about her. But to the Democrats' credit, they have elevated her from that. Nobody knew her. Nobody had any idea what the heck. They have brought her up to the point where certainly the Democrats are enthused where they ever were with Biden about her candidacy. I believe, though, that it's because they hate Donald Trump so much, they could have put up just about anyone. And I think would be in the same position. So, again, the Democrats' strategy, it was 4 years ago. We hate Donald Trump. We're going to vote against him. I don't care. Anything else, doesn't matter. Just keep Trump out of office. And the Trump campaign, their message is Joe Biden ruined the country, and Kamala Harris will do the same thing. Therefore, we can't afford to have that happen. So you have these very polarizing, partisan attacks at each other, and that's what people are going to have to use to decide, unless they watch your show and they listen to La Movida Radio, and we talk about people having a responsibility to go learn about the candidates and their positions. And if they do that, they still come away with that decision, then they've made their decision.
Over that, thank you, Brandon, for your time.